Well, hi, Roy. Good afternoon.
Hey, good afternoon, Warren. How are you?
Hey,
Excuse me.
good, good. Thanks for joining us for the very exciting episode number three of Space 1999. This episode, Roy, what episode are we discussing this week?
Well, you know what I'm going to do, Warren? I'm actually going to use a clipping that I have from a TV guide from back from April of 1979 when Space 1999 was actually in reruns, but in syndication. And this was off of Channel 11. TV guide back in the day used to give like a little bit of a synopsis, and I thought this was very interesting. So, and it reads, giving the title something it normally would not do. Black Sun, a space phenomena that devours even light, is sucking Alpha towards its center. That is the discussion for today. Black
Oh,
Sun,
that sounds intriguing. I wanna really see this episode badly.
episode number 3. Looking forward to it.
All right, we'll dive right in with that beautiful intro and come back with a very special guest.
Wow.
Yes, that very, very special opening that Catherine Bugeaud did for us, and I'm sure the viewers likely noticed the tempo is downsped a bit, just so that we can hopefully get around some geo blocking.
I did
um,
notice that.
yeah, yeah.
Nice
No,
touches,
it,
yeah.
it was intentional. It's fun. I've never really heard it. I'm used to hearing it a little quicker,
Yep.
a little higher pitched because of the difference sometimes in the home video releases between PAL and NTSC. There was always a little difference, and I found the UK releases were always played a little fast. So that's unusual to hear a little slower for sure.
Yeah, it really
But
had a nice touch. And Catherine, as usual, has knocked it out of the park. So thank you again, Catherine, for that.
Yeah, it
yeah,
looked great. It looked great, guys.
yeah.
Thanks,
I
Steve.
love the way she clipped in all 24 episodes of year one for us there. It was really well done. Yeah. So, so today we're joined by a very special friend, Mr. Steve Warnek, to discuss the episode Black Sun. Definitely a fan favorite for a lot of people out there. So this is going to be a really fun episode. And thanks, Steve, for joining us.
Oh,
Yeah.
thanks. Good. It's really great to be here. I actually rewatched the episode a few days ago, so this is actually very opportune.
Oh, excellent. Very, very good. Yeah, and
Yes.
as Warren was saying, this is definitely a fan favorite. It was Martin Landau. Actually, I had one of the last conventions I had seen him at, and it was at actually it was a Saturday Nightmare convention in June of 2011. He was doing a Q&A, and he had said about this episode being his favorite or one of his favorites. So definitely, stands out as a landmark episode with a lot of fans, and it's episode number 3, fresh out of the gate. So
Hmm.
that says a lot right there too.
Is it personally one of your favorites, Steve? Like, is it one that you revisit quite often?
It's one of those. It's one of those on my top like 5 list. I mean, uh, I like it because of the tone. It's a very deep, very introspective episode, and it's like, how would you go about like something that could very well be the end of your world. And it's just like the themes that are being done there are really great, and it's a really introspective episode. That's what I really enjoy about it. The scenes with the crew doing whatever they're doing, between Victor Bergman and between John Koenig and, uh, Matthias and, and Kano, those kind of things. It's just, it's just these little snippets of things you're seeing that are really just give you, it's just little character moments there that just give you such a window. So, yeah, and it's just mysterious. I love the mystery of it. It's a very slow burn, even though there's, some there's some actiony sequences there. It's a very slow burn, and that's what I liked about it.
It was a great way to develop the characters too, because again, fresh out of the gates, third episode. I mean, you had the pilot breakaway, matter of life and death, and we get to learn more about. I would say more about Victor. We get to learn more about the relationship between Koenig and Dr. Russell, Helena, that's developing. Even with Paul Morrow and Sandra Benz. I mean, Sandra is evidently involved in a relationship, and with Mike Ryan, the pilot that's lost, that is doing the exploration when they first come across the Black Sun.
Yeah, that didn't last long.
No, and what's interesting too is, excuse me, this script was originally, I guess, it was by David Ware and developed in November of 1973. And in the first draft of this, anyway, he actually was engaged, or you could say both Sandra and Mike were engaged to each other. So there was more of that connection that was formulated. So obviously, that did not carry over into the final episode with the episode being shot. However, the relationship is definitely implied, and you can even see that there's that tension where, when he says he'll be right back, and then she says she'll be waiting, and Paul kind of like looks over at Sandra, and Sandra looks at Paul, almost like there's like some kind of jealousy going on there, and some kind of emotional connection, and something that eventually builds upon after Mike is lost on the ill-fated mission. But yeah, excellent characters development, and like you said too, Steve, the Alphans have been through so much in Breakaway, having, broken away from Earth and, pretty much leaving their life behind. And now they've encountered this phenomena that pretty much is going to kill them. And within 3 days, as Koenig says, that, they have to deal with, and they have to come up with something. So it's like, how do you know how you're going to deal with that? And how do you face those, feelings that are erupting being in that type of scenario? And I think this episode really deals with it quite well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to dovetail on that, Roy, and that it's about, a lot of it is about the battle against futility, and I think a lot of it's very much, and I hate to use the pun, it's a matter of life and death, but having to, I think it's humanity and how we are in the face of 100% total adversity, not knowing what happens in the great beyond, and really it's just, even the exercise of just putting up this force field when they know that it's not going to do anything really. I mean, it's only delaying the inevitable.
Right.
And, it's funny because, Chris Penfold had a article he did for the Southeast Bayswater magazine titled dealing with what he called heading towards entropy. And actually Robert Wood and I are doing, and that's part of that book that will come out hopefully within the next month, that Robert Wood and I are working on. But it talks lengthily about the battle against death. What not so much the act of death, but what goes beyond that. How do you deal with it? And those very metaphysical questions, and this is really kind of that stage play, that Waiting for Godot kind of thing. It's like, what are we going to do here? The inevitable is coming, and it's just really, how do we as people, as individuals, and as a society in general, deal with that? It's got a lot of, it's a lot of deep stuff. Yeah, and that's what really makes it a favorite for me. And and Chris certainly touched upon that theme again in his writings.
Yeah, you brought up a good point too with one of the quotes, one of the lines. Helena says to Bergman, "What is the point of the force field?" And then Bergman's response is, it's why you never give up on a patient until they're dead. It's
Hmm.
trying to exert all last opportunities, and in the wake of the force field too. One thing that never, I mean, this is something that they never examined or was never discussed, but this kind of lends itself to the potential mysticism of something was looking out for them to get through the black sun. When you think back, the Eagle was destroyed even before it got to the black sun.
Hmm.
The asteroid prior to the Eagle being destroyed was also destroyed. However, the moon, granted, the base was being protected with the force field, but there was no force field around the moon.
Right.
So theoretically, with the loss of the asteroid, with the loss of the Eagle, really the moon itself
It should have crumbled. Yeah, it should
should
have
have
just
crumbled.
totally disintegrated. Yeah,
Exactly, but it didn't. So
but it
that in
didn't.
itself could have been open to a question of what protected us, what protected the moon, why did the moon get through? And then,
Hmm.
of course, when they go through the black sun and what they experience, what each of the Alphans experience, because even when it when they're discussing I'm jumping ahead, but when they're actually through it, and Paul says, we traveled right through it. It was incredible. It was amazing. It was
Hmm.
fantastic. That lends to the point that we only saw what Koenig and Bergman were experiencing, but
Hmm.
everyone on the base went through
Had some.
something.
They had some kind of experience. Yeah.
Exactly. And that in itself is very thought provoking and very deep.
Hmm.
Your thoughts on it, Warren?
You guys touched on a few things here. There's a lot to unpack, and especially considering this is only the third episode, they were
Yeah.
really, really ahead of the game on a lot of the ideas and theories they were presenting. And of course, it's the first real mention of a cosmic intelligence, a mysterious unknown force, of course, even going, before, I mean, it's during the conversation between John and Victor. um, it's interesting. I've thought about this quite a bit down through the years, and especially because when they first aired, they were so jumbled and out of order. I feel the episode actually does play a little better if you watch it later. Throughout the run, because those character moments I think are a little more impactful and resonate somewhat. Um, the other thing is overall, although it's probably in my top five as well. It's I don't know. I remember the episode, and I remember when it first came out, because this was one of the episodes that was highly criticized and scrutinized from a science perspective, right?
Hmm.
And it was, a lot of people were claiming that they were just, completely out to lunch with some of the thoughts and ideas. But having said that, I feel it's one of the reasons why it's stuck with so many people. 50 years later, it's because of that mysticism, like you said, Roy. That's was really one of the things that the writers and Chris and everybody very early on were and trying to present to the viewer, and it's one of the reasons why I think it works so well.
Yeah, yeah, it definitely, in a lot of ways, I think it was ahead of its time. If you were looking, and what Steve, kind of said too at the beginning too, we were talking about there was some action in the episode, but this was more of a character-driven, thought-provoking type of story.
Yeah, it's
And
very
I
character
think,
driven. Yeah.
yeah, and depending upon when you were seeing this, and where you are and where you are or where you were in your life, I think there may be a less or more of an appreciation for this episode. For me personally, I think as I got older, I appreciated it more so. I mean, I remember seeing it the first time back in like 1975.
Yeah.
I don't know if it were
Hmm.
1976. I'm not sure if it was necessarily the first time it was aired, but I remember it being on, and I was like out playing with my friends, and I came in, and I think my mom was actually watching it, and then I was like, okay, the black sun's on, and I was like, okay, and then I
Hmm.
just went about doing my thing. But from a story standpoint, and the evolution of the show and just everything it represents, it really makes you hit the brakes, stop to wonder about things, and just wonder about, the awe of the universe. And it's done very, very well. And this is why I think so many, we will talk about this as our show progresses in the weeks ahead, but there is definitely a difference between the first and second series of Space 1999, and not to say one is better than the other, but in terms of metaphysical aspects and just really being very thought provoking, the first season really lent to that, and it really just made you stop to think. And this is just a beautiful example of it. And again, fresh out of the gates, episode 3, and it's hitting it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
It's a shame Space 1999 didn't have the opportunity, because this is almost like a representation of what the series was. I mean, this is like a defining moment, and
Or could have been.
Could have been. I mean, obviously there were changes that took place. It's a shame that, if the powers that be didn't have to kind of allow them,
muddle what they did with the way they did, or meddle the way they did.
Exactly. Could you imagine a show like this, second series, third series, fourth series, fifth series? I mean, it really, I think I think in a lot of ways, this series was just a little too soon for the audience. And that's unfortunate, because I think if it'd been later, I think there would have been more of an acceptance, more of an appreciation. And not so much from the fans, but I think from the powers that be to have allowed it, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. But that's a whole nother discussion for a whole nother time.
It would have made a really great 2-part, season 1 into season 2 cliffhanger set,
Sure.
2 bookends, you could have done that, I think, with this.
Yeah.
I think there was certainly enough there.
Well, and it's funny you say that, Steve, because I've heard a lot of people down through the years even cite that this episode makes a good ending to year 1 if you happen to watch it last, right? And just that whole ending sequence where they come back and they're all in wonder, and they can't believe it, and what are the odds, and then of course the beautiful scene with Barry Morse at the end, where he's walking down the hall and he kind of turns and sort of breaks the fourth wall, if you will, and kind of winks at the camera and flicks his cigar. It's just a wonderful, wonderful moment.
And it's chilling when Helena says, something brought us home, and then Koenig goes, yes, home. It's like, and then everybody's like looking at everybody, and it's like that's a statement. I mean,
that's where it really turns for them. Exactly. Yeah. Because that's where they have suddenly, just going through that experience, now they really are, it really is where they, where the heart is. So, and it's a very heartfelt episode, and I could see why it really resonates with fans. In fact, let's see, just so that we have some additional reference material, I've got my Destination Moonbase Alpha book open.
Wow, Steve, you came prepared.
I did, absolutely. I got it all up here now, so I even have quotes and everything we can use. So, but I mean, it's really thought provoking, especially in when back then you had the threat of like nuclear annihilation at any time, and now I think it resonates even again today. It's like, well, what the heck would you do in those last 7 minutes you have of life before, how would you do this? Would you cower in a bunker somewhere, or would you be just like, okay, I am going to meet my death with composure, and see, and just be what I am until the last very moments of life, and luckily, I mean, luck or fate or whatever brings them through, and they're able to survive it. And you could say it's, they toy about with the idea of God, and it's like more, like and I don't know really if the writers were really wanted to go that direction per se, but they wanted to do something a little more broad a spectrum, not as easy an answer. That it wasn't just simply God's will. It was something a little more. Yeah. I mean, I don't want to upset anyone, but to say it's a different take on it.
A different interpretation, and they did that very nicely just by making that voice female, right?
Yep.
So
Yep.
automatically, because 50 years ago that was an unbelievable concept that God could have been a female, right? But
Right.
I think sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm finished. I'm sorry, Warren. Go ahead.
No, that's okay. That's okay. It's just it was a way to present these new ideas and concepts that had never been done before. And like you said, Roy, it was so groundbreaking on that level that it was maybe a little too far advanced for a lot of viewers. Who knows?
I wanted to piggyback off of two things that Steve brought up. One thing we don't get to see is what is actually taking place in different areas of Alpha to the full extent. We do see some. So, I mean, obviously we have Koenig and Bergman that are together. In fact, Paul Morrow is pretty much manning his post, and he's pretty much going to hang in there until to the end. I mean,
I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah. I mean, that's just that little scene with him. It's like, good man, you're Paul,
Yes, exactly.
That's a great line. It says an awful lot.
It does. And it he was pretty much going to, stay with the ship until the bitter end. And
yeah, he's like the captain of the Titanic. He'll stay until it goes,
And then, Paul goes, off to his quarters, and he's enjoying the music, in which, quote unquote, when Tanya comes in and says, can I, about sharing with the music with him, and he just smiles. And, we're left to an interpretation of who knows what happened after that point. It was a nice character moment between the two of them. And the other piece is we see Kano, as well as with Matthias playing chess.
And that's a beautifully shot. I love how they did that shot, where it's like the clear chessboard from from below. I mean, that's just great the way they did that whole thing.
I'm gonna kind of digress here for 1 second. There's one show from another show that I actually saw a shot done like that, and it was from a Star Trek episode called The Mark of Gideon, which is one of my least favorite episodes. What happens is Kirk is talking to Onan, and they shot from up through the table. And it's very similar to that, but it's very effective. So, not to digress into Star Trek.
No, that's okay. That's okay.
But yes, it was beautifully done, and the exchange between the two of them works extremely well. The other thing that I want to touch upon too is there was a scene that was deleted. It was filmed probably due to running time, or maybe a changing of deciding on going in different course with the script. But originally, as conceived, I guess in maybe an earlier draft, there were going to be maybe 10 individuals that were going to be on the survival ship instead of 6. And preferably, I'm thinking it would have been 5 men, 5 women. And what had happened was there's a scene that was cut where a male technician and a female technician are discussing amongst themselves that they are concerned about the survival ship, and then thinking maybe that Koenig was essentially using it for a getaway for main mission personnel. And what happens is Dr. Russell and Dr. Matthias overhear it, and the scene was ultimately cut, and in its place was put in where Matthias is coming into the Eagle, where supplies are being put into the Eagle, along with the security guard Tony Allen and another technician. And I guess they filmed that maybe about a month after principal photography for the episode had been completed. So, the editing was taking place. However, what actually remained as part of that was when Helena goes to main mission and wants to talk to Koenig and says, "It's important that I talk to you." And essentially what she was going to do was she was going to let him know what
she was going to spill the beans on that. Okay.
And then he says to her, does it have anything to do with the test? And she says, no. And then he says, it's going to have to wait. So there was like that carryover there that remained, but it could have been anything. So it's interesting that they could have gone in that direction, because it's almost like the Alphans, there are some Alphans that were essentially getting nervous, wondering, are we going to be abandoned here while, the others take off? It's a character. It's kind of an interesting character moment, because really it shows that, humans are being humans. Not everybody's potentially going to be trustworthy. In fact, if you're watching, when you're watching the episode and Koenig is announcing about who's being announced for the survivorship, and they're showing the sequence in the Eagle cockpit, Eagle 5, you can see the male and female technician in the background of the Eagle cockpit. So they were the two that were having that discussion. So I thought that was just an interesting piece to bring up. Again, it was deleted from the final cut, but still, it's a direction that they could have gone in. They decided not to. We probably saw something of this with Seance Spectre a little bit with Sanderson, where he really, again, year 2, but he had misgivings about the command chain, thinking things were being, hidden from the rest of the Moonbase Alpha staff. So again, it's just a moment that could have been, but wasn't.
But there's hints of that even in Black Sun with Alan Carter's reaction.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right? And the way that Alan now is that a like a grasp at survival? Like is he feeling, or was it sincere? Was it, listen, Commander, if anybody can get them somewhere, it's me.
Right.
So it's sort of open for interpretation there.
Well, not to speak for Nick, and this is something we could even, bring him on to talk about, and we can mention it in an episode, future episodes. But what I have heard too is he really was not happy with the way that came across, because really, my interpretation was that it wasn't that he was trying to run out on the Alphans. He was essentially saying that, I'm going to get them to where this survival ship is going to survive. It's not going to.
It's going to get somewhere, and but for that to happen, I really need to be.
Yeah, there. I never took that as, he was like, running away, or if he was trying to leave them behind. He was essentially going to be, almost like the hero, in the sense that, he's an explorer, he's an adventurer, and he's going to make sure that, it's going to be a successful mission. It's going to be, the survival ship will just be that.
Yeah.
But you're right, Warren. It is open to interpretation, though.
It is a line that's very open to interpretation. Absolutely.
Well, and even just the way he sort of grills everybody around him. He goes, "Did you know about this, Paul, Sandra?" Right. So he's got that tone where it's really hard to determine. Here's one thing I just thought of, though, discussing this and considering it was such an early episode. And we talked about those character moments and how we'd all spend them, if the bombs were flying. I mean, it's deep and personal to all of us. But how do you guys feel that somebody like Simmons would have reacted?
So I'm glad you mentioned that word, because the episode, what was the episode? Earthbound?
Yes.
Okay, so that could be why, Roy, why that particular scene might have been cut, because they may have been saying, well, we're kind of dealing with this kind of similar thing in Earthbound, and we're really going to need material for that, or we're already got something going there.
Sure.
So that could very well be why they cut that.
Yeah.
That's very good. That's excellent observation, so.
Yeah. And it makes me wonder all that much more, because we've been talking obviously about Breakaway, Matter of Life and Death, and in those deleted Breakaway scenes, the one thing that blew my mind was the fact that they were they were working on some form of arc storytelling from one episode to the other originally. There's no doubt about it, because they referenced Lee Russell in Breakaway and the Astro 7 mission, right?
Yep.
So very interesting.
Yeah. And it's funny, I'm also going to dovetail back to the chess scene for a second, because, the way we've been talking about it, just really thought of something for me. When you have Matthias and then you have Kano there, dueling it, they're kind of duking it out on the chessboard, and when you look at it from terms of, okay, because it's all very foreboding. Yeah, the whole setup is very foreboding and everything. It's like, and Matthias was very smug. He's like, you're not going to beat me, and in a way, and Kano just sits back and it's like, it's just like, what am I going to do here? That is a small. There's a subtext there for the whole situation they're in. It could have been. It's just like the black sun saying, "You're not going to beat me. Forget it. It's not happening." And so, in a kind of way, the chess game really exemplifies that kind of thing, and the subtext there is just amazing.
Great point. Yeah, it's a representation of that.
Yeah, it really sums up a lot of what what the situation is right there. So.
And the poker, playing poker with just a few lines of dialogue that are just, I mean, and we met Jack McKenzie in London. I mean, his line during the poker game, I'll raise you 100, Smitty, right? And it's just, it's just, yeah, and
you're bluffing.
Yeah.
Yep.
Wonderful. Any other thoughts, guys?
Oh, well, let's see. Hold on. We got others.
Let's.
I got a whole book. Let's bring out the Robert Wood book.
Sure.
Another plug for Robert, by the way.
Hey, listen, Paul Jones at the beginning of the episode, we touched on that character, but the actor was a musician, correct?
That's correct.
With who was it? He was a monkey?
No, he wasn't a monkey.
No,
I forget what band he was in, but he wasn't a monkey though.
Okay.
Because I was just thinking of something myself. I don't know if it's ever been discussed before, but do you think he got that role the same way that Alan Willis got the role because he was it Alan Willis or Vic Elms? I can't remember who scored Ring Around the Moon, but he was dating Sylvia Anderson's daughter, Dee Anderson. And they were in sort of the music industry together. Do you think there's any possibility that that's why they cast Paul Jones as well?
I personally am not sure how the casting went for that. So that's a good question. I don't know.
Because he was very involved early on, and obviously had some say or influence of some kind. So
he may have been somebody. I mean, there's been examples in history, and actually in Space 1999, where musicians trying to break into acting. I mean, look at Cher. That's the there was a prime example of somebody right there. Also, and I can't think of the actor's name at the moment, but he was in the Lambda Factor. He was in the London 1999. In fact,
I got his book right here. Jess Conrad.
Jess Conrad. He was breaking into acting as well too. So there's a lot of examples of that where that's an artist is just going into a different realm, and this may have been the case. I'm not sure if Paul Jones, what he's done, or other things that he's done. That's something I'm not really up on. But,
maybe related to Davy Jones. I don't know.
Yeah.
There was something strange there. But listen, it just made me think of something else. I'm going to diverge since you covered Star Trek there, Roy. All roads do lead to Battlestar Galactica. What about Rick Springfield in the pilot?
Oh,
yeah.
Very first, and sort of the same. It's like he's there and he dies right away, same as Paul Jones, right? Just like with the first couple of scenes.
Zach, that's right.
Zach, yeah. No, one thing we didn't bring up too is now this was episode 3. Now this was the second directing job for Lee H. Katzin. Now he actually had directed Breakaway, and which had gone over. This episode had gone 16 days as far as filming. Unfortunately, he was not brought back after this episode. I think a lot of it had to do with him going over, the time constraints, because they pretty much, time is money, as they say, right? And I think that's something that happened with this. Interesting enough, he actually had worked with Martin Landau and Barbara Bain back on Mission Impossible back from.
Okay.
I got the job. He was recommended by Martin and Barbara.
Yeah, so there's that connection right there. So. But as far as other jobs that he's done, he actually had directed the pilot for The Man from Atlantis, if you remember
Oh,
that.
wow. That's a
Really?
classic.
Yes.
Oh my
And that
God.
was 1977. And then there was a sci-fi show, I believe it was called The Quest. Now, that one I'm not familiar with. And that was in 1976. But yeah, so definitely a prolific director. But, you know, unfortunately took too much time for the show.
I'd never heard of that cut scene before, Roy. So was that in the early
Yeah,
scripts?
so I'm going to give credit to where credit is due, because I know Steve has been bringing out the books. So I just want to let some references I've been doing has also from David Hirsch and Bob Wood's book,
Sure. Yeah.
Everything There Was, and then also Space 1999, The Vault by Chris Bentley. So that's where
Oh.
Roy, well, listen, since we've all got our Space 1999 books, then I'll bring this one up. This was Bob's original.
Yes.
And this is very special to me on a lot of levels. And I've never really put this out there before, but everybody in London actually signed this for me, and this copy was presented to me at the end of the event in the weekend. And just thank you all for the thought and the kind gesture. It really meant a lot to me in London. So,
Good stuff. Very,
hey,
very good.
Steve, listen. Roy, we forgot again to sort of run a little introduction for our guest. Steve, tell us a little bit about your background in history, your association with the show, maybe other projects you worked on, things like that.
Oh, now you're going to put me on the spot, aren't you? Okay. Okay. Well, for anyone who doesn't know out there, I was a freelance writer for Star Trek from 95 to 2004. Started with a pitch I made to Ronald Moore for the last season of Star Trek: The Next Generation. A couple pitches later, I sold something to Deep Space Nine, so I was a contract writer for about 6 months there. And then I just continued on pitching various things for the show up until the ending, really, of Enterprise, in 2004, where after that, Les Moonves said, no, we're not doing any more of this. So, but we all know where Les went. So anyway, but, so after that, I was really on my own, in the middle of the desert with no direction home. And I was looking for something to do. A very good friend of mine sent me to a site that said Space 2099. And then the next chapter of my life started. I met Eric, our good friend Eric Bernard, some years back. And we had struck up a very good conversation, a remote friendship. And, it's like, I remember when he was trying to do space, this whole reimagining, not so much reimagining, but like a reworking of the original show with updated effects, tighter editing, that kind of thing, cleaning it up for a new audience, yet still being very true to the original. And I really liked what he was doing. I said, I'm a writer. Here's my credentials. And, he's like, well, I don't need this right. I don't need a writer for what I'm doing, but we're looking eventually to do something else, maybe a sequel at some point. We're going to try to propose. So I'd love to, do that at some point. So anyway, long story short, met him. There was a convention in 2012 in Burbank, in Los Angeles, Burbank, I forget.
Burbank, yeah.
Yep. And, that's where I then finally met Eric. And, this is my first Space 1999 convention. I had been to like the Star Trek convention and all that before and all that, but I met some really great people out there and, struck up a very good, over 12-year relationship with Robert Wood, my writing partner, who you all know. I think he was on your last show. And then I had the very great opportunity to meet Christopher Penfold, who is also one of the most amazing relationships I've ever had in my life with someone. I little did I know that when I plopped a script in front of him and said, "Here, would you mind reading this and tell me what you think?" And it was a idea for a pilot I was thinking of way back then. Um, and he was like, "Oh," and he was like, like, "Do I know you from somewhere or something?" It's like, okay, that's interesting. And like, yeah, I was a totally ugly American and said, "Here," I just like, "Here, would you mind reading this?" And he's like, so he called me up a few months later. He's like, so you gave me this script? Yeah, I did, and I read it. Oh, okay, great. What do you think? It's like, I liked it. I'm like, good. I didn't understand one thing about it. That was my only concern, but other than that, I really liked what you did with it. And then eventually Robert and Eric and Christopher, well, we all decided, hey, I'm here in Florida. I had the place, it's like, would you mind? Let's come together and talk about some things that we want to do. And one of the things we were looking at doing was Moonbase Alpha Legacy as a sequel and all that, and we had, and I know that there was this competing thing from Jace Hall that was going on, which never went anywhere. But that was the thing of the day, and, we were talking about things, and then, we had been watching some movies that evening. I think Gravity was one of them. And, we were thinking about some things, and then, things came together, and we were just beating around a couple things. And, we started to ask, like, can we do something that's interesting, that's very modern day, and can speak to, the concerns we have in society now, and where are we going uh, as humanity? Where are we going? Very open question. Again, the threat of nuclear war coming back together, forming again, and where are we going as where is our planet going? And we came up with this idea called Helios, and we had been working it. We had started working with it for the next 10 years or so. Spec script, a pilot script rather, and then a couple other, then we diced it up into a couple other ways, first as a movie, then as a web series, and then as a TV pilot, couple different things. And we were looking at that, and we were pitching it around Hollywood for a while, and and London. And Chris was also trying to pitch around London, and we never really we got close once or two times, but the way Hollywood is, they just don't want to do anything that's not an established property and has an audience. And, they would rather do Spider-Man 3 and 4 and 5, not that I hate Spider-Man or anything, because I think what they did recently was pretty good, bringing all those universes together, but if they don't have a property behind it, or somebody who's really a big name, that's attached to something, they don't want to know. So it's like, all right, fine. So,
it's really tough. New IPs, yeah, they just won't touch them, right?
It's amazing that anything gets made though now, Steve. You know what I mean? Because it's like it's almost like unless it's been established already, they're not going to touch it. There's no leaps of faith, so to speak, to try something new. It's I don't know. It's almost like a form of stagnation on a lot of levels.
It really is. It's really, it's the big studios. They don't want to do anything, and they want to maximize their profits. But it's been like that since the 80s too. I mean, I remember that from like the video game industry. They just want to do anything they can to attach to existing properties, and I get that. So it was
Jace Hall was trying to do.
Right. Yeah, it's recycling of old shows. I mean, and that, like you said, in the 80s, I was just talking about Mission Impossible. That was something that took place, and even I think at one point, if I remember correctly, it was 1988 when that came out. And what happened was the writer's strike of '88 was going on, and what they were doing is they were using scripts that were from the series back in the '60s, recycling them so that they could actually move forward in film, and they filmed in Australia. Because of
that second season of Star Trek: The Next Generation, because of the writer's strike, they were They were rehashing scripts from that were just lying around from Star Trek Phase 2, and they started doing some of that. I think The Child was one of those that they did. Yeah. So, it's a very tough market nowadays. It's the toughest it's ever been. I mean, and now, one exec told me, it's like, why should I give you $12 million to do this when I can get crap online for free? I mean, it's like, well, you're right. You're absolutely right. And you can't talk to those people. Yeah. So, Christopher and I had a talk, about 2 years ago or so, and was like, he's like, yeah, nobody wants to do anything. I don't know what we're going to do. I'm like, well, can I swear on your show or no? If
Go
it's
ahead.
In context. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I said, well, Chris, fuck it all and fuck them and their money. Okay. I will rewrite it. It's too good to let it die on the vine. I will rewrite it as an audio drama. We have the people waiting in the wings to do it. We can get Nick to do the narration, and I will finance it myself as an audio drama, and we'll do it that way. And I will executive produce it myself. And I'm like, and he's like, you're really going to do that? I'm damn right I'm going to do this, and, so I took, because we had then had 3 scripts really all together, because I was writing episodes, other than the pilot for Helios, I was writing episodes 2 and 3 for, while I was in Hawaii during COVID, on a job. So I had nothing better to do other than drink, so it's like, all right, fine. So I would go out, I would talk to Chris on FaceTime, like, all right, what are we doing here? Bang. So we did another 2, Robert and script, and Chris and I did another 2 scripts out there. It was really great 3-episode arc there. So it's like, it's too good not to let it go. So I rewrote episode 1, our pilot, changing everything, putting in dialogue now for a narrator, so which was going to be Nick, and I knew Nick was the right person. I mean, he had that voice, that gravitas. Yep. And I knew he would be the right person, because I don't know if you remember, but there was in fact, I even have it here. I'll show you. If you could give me 1 second, I'll show you exactly what I was going to use as my inspiration for this. If you can give me 1 second. Sure. Give me 1 second.
No problem. You take your time. Roy, we'll have to see how those F-bombs get around the geo-blocking.
Yeah. I believe you have to put up some kind of disclaimer or something too. But
yeah, that's okay. No. This has been fascinating, and I was meaning to ask. When Steve comes back, what's the latest? Like, at what point is it at now? Because I know they during the Helios panel in London, they actually previewed a couple of audio clips from things. So be curious to see where things are at as of today.
Yeah, no, I know they're really working to move along, and I think he was saying, well, when he comes back, we'll confirm with him as far as the releases of that. One of the things I wanted to touch upon too, and just before Steve comes back, and then if he does come back, we'll come back to it though, is that this was an episode that was dealing with. Oh, and there's Steve.
I am here.
Okay.
I also got a refill. So, me, I'm old, so I remember vinyl. Which
Vinyl's
is
cool.
Just strangely in vogue again.
It is. It all comes full circle, no pun intended.
Yeah, but it's like, here, you got that. Yep. Oh, look at that one. That's a classic there.
They were awful. They were so bad.
There's a quote of dialogue on there, which my one friend, and I know he's probably not going to be listening to this, but Joe Metz, back in 1970, I think he had that record before I did. It was like 78. And for Breakaway, and Koenig says to him, I want a readout on contingency plan Exodus. And he goes, yes, sir. And it's just the way that he said it. And we would be dying because it was just like so out there. And he goes, yes, sir. and it stuck with me 46 years later. So
I've had these since I was a child. Okay. Yeah. that's how long I've had this stuff laying
That's
around.
good
Yep.
stuff.
I've still got him too, and I played him to death. I mean, for as bad as those radio dramas are,
It's
can you
all
even
we had.
call them that?
It's
They
all
were,
we had.
It's all
I
we
We
know,
sat
had.
in black and white
played it to
TV and
death.
13 channels of garbage.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
you know.
That, and thank God for the RCA soundtrack, because that got played to death.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, how many of you remember
I've got it.
this?
Oh yeah, I've still got it. I've still
Okay.
got it.
Frederick Brand, was it not Frederick Brand?
Roscoe Lee Brown.
Roscoe Lee Brown.
Roscoe Lee Brown did the
Roscoe Lee
narration.
Brown from Logan's Run. Yep.
Yep.
So I remember. So this is all we had back then, and I remember playing this all the time. Okay.
And just for the folks that are not viewing, Steve just pulled out the story of Star Wars. So yeah.
So when you only had this, you know, and in fact, I think I even have an 8mm film here too of it. But you know,
I was going to mention your projector up there. Very cool.
Yeah, that thing here. Hold on.
Hey Steve, is that a Super 8 or 8mm?
I'm not sure. I think it's just 8.
Yep.
I think it's 8, but that was just a garage find. But see, this we also had.
For sure.
Wow, nice.
Yeah.
Ken Films.
Yeah. Oh, amazing,
So,
amazing. And the things we used to do, and on that, just really quickly, when I was 10 years old, 12 years old, our local public library, you could go in and rent 16mm films.
Oh, wow.
And so I had a projector, but they had 6 or 8 original Star Trek episodes. So it's like every holiday, every long weekend, I was hooking up 3 or 4. They had the Menagerie and Space Seed and things like that. But yeah, you'd hang the sheet off the wall and connect a little speaker to it to get a little more sound. What a time, hey?
Oh, that was a classic time. I mean, you know, and you know, I used to. It was funny when I was in school, when I was in public school, way back in the day, in like the other century. You know, I mean, I was working with 8mm film stop motion. You know, so I would like, I was like, what, 9 years old, 10 years old, whatever. I'm like, I didn't know anything about anything, but I would like draw all kinds of crap from Battle of the Planets and everything, and just take all right, 7 frames, advance it, do a little more, 7 frames, and just do all this stuff. And they would like put it up on the screen at the end of the semester kind of thing, you know, in the auditorium. So, I mean, like somewhere, Public School 54 in Staten Island is some of my stuff. I don't know where it is, but I'd love to get it again. But so going back to this, I was like, you know, and I told Chris, like, this was very important to me. And this is the one thing I remember that if we're going to do Helios, I want it to be like this.
Yeah.
I want it to be where you had a strong narrator bringing you through the whole story. And that's what Roscoe Lee Brown did here. And that's what I wanted. He was like, if we've got Alan Carter. Yeah. If we have, you know, Nick Tate to do this, it would be so great. Yeah. I mean, he would just knock it out of the park. And he really did. I mean, he just hours and hours he did this, you know, and it's like going through. So when we recorded, and we recorded it May of last year. And, you know, I approached, you know, when we approached Nick, you know, Christopher and I and Robert, we approached Nick about doing it. He's like, okay, you know, and I gave him, you know, it's like, it was going to be a SAG production. It was a SAG production, you know, everybody was paid what they should have been, you know, and, you know, and of course, you know, Nick's like, you know, I'm reading your script. I'm like, yeah. It's like, this is like reading a book. Like, you realize how much there is. I realize that, you know, it's like, oh my God, you know. So anyway, but he did a man's job, I have to say. I mean, he was able to do it fortunately, he was able to do it in his recording studio at home, you know, and I could tell when he was up there till like 1 o'clock in the morning, you know, and because I would hear all the stuff, you know, he would just let it run, you know, and just, you know, you let the tape run, you know, while he would do his thing. And he's like going, and he's doing this take and he's doing this take. And he's like, you know, and, you know, oh, the protagonist, you know, the protagonist shoots the vagrant in the distance, pew pew, you know, that kind of thing, you know. And you know, he's just getting tired. But it's like there's times when he's like, you hear these things like, and he goes through his lines like, I can't do anymore. You know, and he just put himself into it. And I think it really showed, you know. I can't thank him enough, you know, and he'd even tell me that.
Well, like I think the word you use, gravitas. I mean, he's got it. I mean, he's
got that voice, you know.
He really does. It's amazing. It's incredible what he did with that.
Yeah. So
Jurassic Park.
Yeah, I mean, you know, but it's like I'm like, he's the one. He's got to be it. You know, he can bring this to where it needs to be. So we recorded it. We recorded it with the rest of the actors last year. So it was Anthony Montgomery, Cindy Dollins, you know, Connor Trenier, Dominic Keating, Tom McLaren. We all came, and Nick was there as well, because Nick has two parts. He's not only the narrator, but he also plays the father character. He's a bit of a curmudgeon, you know, to say the least, you know. And it's like there were some scenes there, you know. It's like, and you know, I Robert and I and Chris envisioned him as like, oh, I see him as this old curmudgeonly guy. You know, he's living out in the desert in his trailer, doing what he's doing, you know. And you know, he doesn't want to be told anything. He's just doing his thing, you know. And there's this great scene with him and Tom McLaren, where he and Cindy, where he's, you know, they give him this this present for his birthday, and he doesn't want anything to do with it. And he's like going off. He's like, oh, you know, he's like, it's a new radio, and he's got this old tube radio that he's been listening to forever, you know. And he's like, you know, no, I don't want it. I don't want anything digital. I don't want anything new. Give me what I want. I know what I want. Don't try to replace it, you know. And it's like, you know, it's like, you know, the Russians, they're trying to spy on you, you know. The Chinese, they're all trying to get to you, you know. Wait till they're just waiting to drop the bombs on you, you know. And he's like, yeah, his Tom McLaren, who plays his son Tom in the film, and in the drama, you know, he's like, Dad, aren't you being a little paranoid? And you know, the line is, you know, he's like, 3 wars and 10 bullets, I'll be as paranoid as I like. You know, and Nick turns to us, you know, in the street, is like, am I really like this? And we all go, yes.
Well, you know, I'm looking forward to having you and Bob on the show, because I'm going to definitely do that in the weeks ahead, because I want to definitely cover this. So hold off on the rest of the story, and we're
okay. No, I'll hold off on that. I just wanted to give you that.
We'll definitely
nugget.
Yeah,
So.
Yeah. This is something for the folks out there to look forward to in regards to what Steve has been working with Bob on this, and then also again, Chris Penfold was a huge and integral part of this. But if you, and then I'm going to give my show just a wink here, Roy's Tie-Dye Sci-Fi Corner, I'm going to be having them on to talk about this more in depth, and we'll definitely get into it and really get into the nuts and bolts of it. So definitely, this will be our cliffhanger for that for right now. So
no, that'll work. I'll keep that. I'll keep that material for the next. So,
but we'll definitely work that out. Just because we're up against the clock too.
Okay.
But in regards to just coming back really quickly in regards to this, to the Black Sun, one of the things I was starting to say to Warren just before when you broke away, just for a second, this episode was one of probably like 4 or 5 that we dealt with the mysterious unknown force, so to speak, too.
Mm-hmm.
Steve, earlier you were talking about, you know, the cosmic intelligence, and really it was never coming out to say about God. However, Victor does have that line where they're going through it, and he even questions it and says, "Are you God?" And it's like it's put out there. And then the other thing is, even before they go through the Black Sun, there's the discussion, and Victor and Barry Morse was just such a natural. he's having that exchange with Koenig, and he's kind of like, just drifting and, thinking about what is to come. And then, it comes up and where Koenig says, "You're not talking about God, are you?" And then he gets like all nervous, and he goes, "I don't know about God." He goes, "I'm a scientist." You know what I mean? It was like,
Exactly.
he's like wrestling with it, but it was so natural the way it came across. And again, then when they go through the black sun, and then they're having that, that experience. But again, it's that cosmic intelligence, and then it shows itself in collision course with Ara. There's a hint of it in War Games, where how they've survived everything, where they're having the conversations with the male and the female alien, Isla Blair and Anthony Valentine, respectively. And then, of course, the Testament of Arcadia is the huge one. So it's just like Warren was saying earlier, it's this big arc that really was developed, but it's almost like it wasn't intentional, or was it? But whether it was or wasn't, it worked.
Well, I think.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yep. No, go ahead, Warren. I'll then.
I was just going to say that I thought of a couple of other threads, and you'd mentioned collision course, Roy, and up until recently, I didn't really put this together, but I was actually watching some reaction videos online, and they were watching them out of order. It's and her name is, we'll hopefully have her on. Her name is Alexa Chipman, and she did all these famous reaction videos. But she was watching the episodes out of order, and she actually saw collision course before Black Sun, and as she's watching Black Sun, she said something, and well, first of all, the entity inside the Black Sun and Ara both have the same line of dialogue. A friend. Who are you? A friend. So she actually thought at one point, and it's completely valid, that the two entities, or the entity inside the Black Sun was Ara, right? And that and even when you hear the voice and you hear the line of dialogue, it's almost the person saying it. There's a similarity there. So that I thought of, as well as the idea that here's a tangent, but as far as a thread that they were maybe trying to establish earlier on, like we talked about the cut scene and how it could have possibly played into Simmons into Earthbound, and we met Clifton Jones a few weeks back wonderfully in London, and he was just amazing, as we all know. But Kano has some very nice scenes, aside from the chess scene, but in the computer facility where Victor approaches him. But they sort of, it's in my mind, were they setting that up to actually pay off in Guardian of Prairie, Kano's connection with the computer and all things computer, and he was sort of set up to be the computer expert, of course, the computer guru, and then of course would that have somehow been an early thread to pay off in Guardian of Prairie, where we actually gets connected to the computer, things like that.
You just reminded me of another thing too, Warren. There was another deleted scene that took place in the Black Sun, and it involved Kano, and actually it involved Computer, where Computer essentially locks Victor in his quarters, because Computer reasons that what's going to happen is, since they have to conserve power, Computer's going to have to be deactivated, and that's something that Kano brings up. However, the Computer, becoming aware of this, is almost trying to protect itself and prevents Victor from leaving his quarters. Koenig essentially intervenes and tells the Computer that, you're programmed essentially to listen, not to, to instruct, or not instruct, but not to execute different types of command orders. And what is able to happen is able to be overridden. To me, that's almost shades of 2001 with the HAL 9000 taking place too.
Sure.
Which could be a reason maybe they decided not to go with that and did not, actually show that. But I thought that was interesting to find out that was something that they actually had scripted and, executed with filming.
Yeah, I don't think they eventually wanted to. I wasn't even aware of that, but I could understand why they didn't want to go in that direction, because it took away from, well, what is really the enemy here, kind of thing.
Right, exactly.
I don't think they wanted to go that.
No.
But it's interesting that you mentioned that.
The other idea of when Alexis saw collision course first is that she was extrapolating that because in collision course Ara has the connection with not only John Koenig but with Alan, that come Black Sun, if they were to have happened in that order, that's the reason why, if it was Ara pulling the strings behind the scenes, she pulled literally the Eagle back as well, because Alan was at the helm and piloting the Eagle, and she had a previous connection with Alan. Just, interesting ideas and theories for sure.
Well, I think Christopher would and the writing team would not, I think they also did not really want to pigeonhole this and use the idea of the very classical idea of God, because God could mean a lot of different things depending on which side of the planet you're on, or wherever you are. But I think they wanted to do something that was not necessarily defined. And you could also argue that, like you say, that the cosmic intelligence was Ara, but you could also do that in reverse as well. And you could say, well, Ara was really just one of the how do I say it, the representatives of the cosmic intelligence, one of the conduits of that. Because the cosmic, that's just a very great, huge thing. And I think that they didn't want to, don't think they would really have wanted to encapsulate that. I think they would have wanted to keep that very open-minded with what that concept is.
That's a great point, Steve, too, because then I'm going to reference this too. I'm a big Star Trek fan, as we know. Star Trek V,
oh God,
yeah, exactly, no pun intended, right? To me, I know that there's a lot behind that, and a lot of things did not go the way that it was intended. But to me, to formulate a story that you're going to find God, it's not going to work. You know what I mean? It doesn't work. You can't. It's there's a term for it. It's escaping me. It's almost how
do you capture God like that? How
right.
do you?
You could say a godlike figure, and and even in Space 1999, I'm going to jump ahead to a second series episode with New Adam, New Eve. Magus proclaiming to be God, or and he says his name is Magus, but Maya and Koenig are having the exchange. He said we were able to find our God, and then she said then we found out that he had a God who had who actually had another that created the universe. So you're going in that direction, but it's one of those things. It's almost like melodramatic. You're not. You can't say that you've found God. At least you can say that a cosmic intelligence or a force.
It's an abstraction. It's a very abstract idea to try to solidify that in something, and even
especially within the confines of science fiction.
Right.
And Star Trek V is certainly, I think it had really great intentions.
Yes.
But it's something that is like, okay, well, how are you really going to do this? Like, well, is it God? Well, no, it's not really God. It's like something that's God-like.
Yeah.
Okay. And I don't think that ever really, I think it needed a lot more setup before you could go in that direction. And it might have made a better series of episodes than it was a film.
Right.
Okay?
I totally agree.
And it also had enough other problems behind it as well. So,
Yeah.
Come on, I still want to see that enhanced version with the rock creatures.
You have that already. It's called All the Glisters.
Yeah.
Gotta love
all roads lead to Space 1999. There we
gotta love smart rocks. That's one of my favorite episodes. You should have me on for that one.
I'm looking forward to our year 1, year 2 discussion that we never got to do.
I know.
We'll have to do that in LA in September.
There you go. I'll do my homework.
Wow, awesome. Well, Steve, listen, this has been just an incredible last hour, and we thank you so much for joining us today. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, thanks for being on, Steve. And
it's
I said,
been a pleasure, guys. Absolutely.
Looking forward to having you on in the weeks to come. We'll we'll iron out a date that works for you and Bob, and then anybody else that you want to have to come on, to talk about Helios, because really looking forward to that. Can you give a plug as far as an anticipated release date of?
We are actively looking for a publisher right now. So whether it's going to be, one of the traditional audio publishing houses like Random or Penguin or whoever it is, there's a whole 24 of them out there, or if it might be a Big Finish, or if it may end up as just simply being put on Audible or Apple, whatever.
Right.
We really do want to get a publisher behind us so that they can really just push it to the rest of the, to all the other portals out there, all the other all the other spots like Audible, whatever. I mean, and that's really what we were looking for, that partner, because we also want to be able to have, CDs as well as, LPs available for you all, so,
Absolutely.
But I mean, that's really what we're doing right now. So hopefully, I'm really hoping we're going to have something before the end of the year.
Okay.
Cross your fingers on that. But yeah, so, and then after that, once we do that, then we'll be pushing for like some kind of crowdfunding for the next one, because the next two we'll talk about that later anyway. But yes, I'm hoping this year. I'm really hoping.
So yeah, we'll definitely stay tuned. Like I said, you're definitely going to be on the show before the end of the year, so we'll work it in.
All right, and I know I sent you a copy, Warren. Roy, I'll send you a copy to the playlist.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so that you both can hear it, and we'd be happy to talk about it, and it'll be really cool.
Very, very cool.
Nice.
Well, thank you, Steve.
Yeah, thanks again. And listen, Roy, I'm going to put you on the hot seat now for a minute.
Sure.
I know you're going to pass this with flying colors, but we've talked about that departure, and on the previous episodes we've done, we've used Ron's line from Missing Link, Until Tomorrow. With this very special episode, I think we should have something very unique. And actually, it was my sister Heather that came up with this. We watched the episode a week ago so that she could catch up and follow along as well. And we both turned to each other at the same time and said, yeah, well, this has definitely got to be the goodbye for Black Sun. So, Roy, to everything that might have been.
To everything that was.
Damn right.
There we go.
And they're everything that is yet to be.
There you go.
Yeah. No, that's great. Well, thanks very much for tuning in, everybody. And
thanks, everyone.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, fellas. This has
Thank
been
you,
great
guys.
again. And we'll see everybody next week for Ring Around the Moon.
Awesome.
Take care, guys.